Alright, today we're going to be talking about inverse functions and basics that you need to know in order to find an inverse function. So first off, what is it? Inverse functions are functions that undo the operations of another function. For example, and this is example 1, if your function f of x equals x plus 3 and we have g of x is equal to x minus 3, then we know that f of x is a function that adds 3 while g of x is a function that subtracts 3. See how they're doing the opposite operation? That means these two are inverse functions. The inverse of a function f of x has this notation, f with a little like exponent -1 of x. We say f inverse of x. That's how we pronounce this. This is how we write inverse notation. So then, therefore, if f of x equals x plus 3, then we know that the inverse is f inverse of x equals x minus 3. Again, plus 3 minus 3, they undo each other. That's the definition of an inverse function. Sometimes, though, some functions, you'll look at them and you can't really tell what the inverse is, and there's certain steps you have to do to find them. Alright, so domain and range, first off, of inverse functions. Inverse functions basically reverse the domain and range of each other. For example, if I have a table that's f of x, let's say I have a table defined for some function f, my inverse table will just be swapping the x and y coordinates. Take a look at how my y now became my x for my inverse function right here. So this, if I gave you a table, you should be able to tell me the inverse table. If I give her a table for a function, you should be able to tell me the inverse. Alright, now let's take a look. Let's say I gave you a set. The inverse of this set right here, 2, 3, 1, 4, 2, 5 is, well, all we got to do is switch the x and y. 3, 2, 4, 1, 5, 2. So these are some basics of what is an inverse if I give you a table, if I give you a set of coordinate points, and if I ask you to find the inverse of a function, there are certain steps to follow. Here we go. Here are the steps. Step 1, rewrite f of x as y. Step 2, switch the x and the y. Step 3, solve the equation from step 2 for y. And step 4, you're going to replace the y from step 3 with the f inverse notation. So let's go ahead and take a look at some examples of how to do this. Again, pause the video if you feel like I'm going too fast. Alright, let's go ahead. Find the inverse of f of x equals 2x plus 3. So let's go along with our steps here. So step 1 was replace f of x with y. I did that. Awesome. Step 2, switch x and y. Great. Step 3 is to solve for y. Therefore, let's begin step 3. In order to make y be by itself, we're going to first subtract 3. Then we're going to divide by 2 so that y is by itself. Awesome. And then I do like to push this a step further and separate these like so. So therefore, I solved for y, guys. Now all I got to do is step 4, which is rewrite this y right here with f inverse, because now I found my inverse already. So this right here was my original function. The inverse function is this right here. These two functions basically are the ones that undo each other, if you will, operationally. Alright, let's move on. Alright, so example 5, let's take a look at this. Again, I'm going to walk us through the steps. Step 1, switch f of x to y. Step 2, switch x and y. Step 3, solve for y. In this scenario, I'm going to first subtract 5. Then, to get rid of 1/2, multiply both sides by 2. When you multiply both sides by 2, make sure that 2 distributes, so you get 2x minus 10 is equal to y. Now you have y solved for, therefore, step 4 is just rewrite the y with f inverse notation, and you're done. Alright, so step 6 was one I would like people to do in their groups. But of course, if you're watching this and you don't have your group, well, let's do it together. Alright, step 1, switch f of x to y. Step 2, switch x and y. Step 3, begin to solve for y. So, in order to solve for y in this scenario, we have to first multiply by 3 to get rid of that division by 3. Next, we subtract by 4. Then we divide it by 2. And well, I usually like to separate these, like 3 over 2x minus 4 over 2, which is 2, equals y. But whatever, I kept it like that in this example. So step 4 was to rewrite your y with f inverse notation. And that is it. That is how you find the inverse of a function. Good luck.